Today, let's talk about SARMs, which I think is a very important topic because they've become very popular recently in the fitness industry, and they're being marketed as a safe alternative to steroids. They promise muscle growth, they promise there won't be any side effects, no rebound effects, and that basically testosterone will continue to be produced as usual. And of course, that catches your attention, and you write to me asking if it's really that safe, if you can actually take it, and unlike testosterone, there won't be any side effects. And it's like some kind of miracle of the 21st century, but in reality, things are a bit different, and as always, a bit more complicated. You get why it's presented this way. They're trying to sell you a miracle product with supposedly no side effects. But let's figure it out. I often hear the question, Doc, tell me, this isn't testosterone, right? It's some kind of receptor stimulator, so will it just stimulate my receptors? But unlike testosterone, mine won't shut down, which is different. And if you think you can trick physiology, in reality, it won't work. So what are SARMs, really? SARMs are substances that bind to androgen receptors, meaning they're the same receptors that testosterone binds to in cells, but they do this selectively, and that's why there are theories. And in theory, they really do activate receptors in cells, in muscles, in bones, but not, for example, in the prostate, skin, or liver. Almost not at all, so accordingly. So it would seem that you get all the effects of testosterone, but you don't get acne, you don't lose hair, your prostate doesn't hurt, and you don't have any problems with your body overall, just the muscles. That's what we need. Yes, but that's how it was really intended, and that's how their mechanism was actually described. They were intended to stimulate testosterone action at the cellular nucleus and trigger gene expression. That is, to increase the activity of certain genes that are responsible for first, protein synthesis, second, the growth of muscle fibers, and third, bone tissue density. So in theory, this is exactly what any bodybuilder needs. And originally, if we remember the history, SARMs were not created for bodybuilders, as many of you might think. I was surprised you thought this drug was made for bodybuilding. It was actually invented to treat sarcopenia. This is age-related muscle loss. When a person has osteoporosis, low muscle mass, cachexia, often these are not just age-related conditions. We also see this very often, including in my own work with cancer patients. So where did this athletic interest come from? As usual, right? The drugs aspirin, MK 2866, and ligandrol, LGD 4033, increased muscle mass in elderly people without notable effects on the prostate or liver. And athletes made an obvious conclusion. If this works on my grandmother and grandfather, then why shouldn't it work on me? Indeed, it actually makes sense. If it works on an old person, then for us the effect will be explosive. And that's why, along with it, when using SARMs, we also get a disruption of regulation, as SARMs affect the hypothalamic pituitary axis. Although the problem isn't that SARMs are some kind of chemicals, but that they, like any androgenic agents, trigger negative feedback. Yes, they do work selectively, but the feedback is still there. Just like with any anabolic drug or testosterone drugs, the brain detects the increase in androgenic activity and reduces the production of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, luteinizing hormone, and follicle-stimulating hormone. So, simply put, our natural testosterone starts to drop during short cycles, and it may seem harmless, but if the cycle lasts 6 to 8 weeks, Leydig cell activity, responsible for testosterone production, declines sharply, slowing spermatogenesis. Endogenous testosterone levels also drop steeply, becoming negative. And when a person comes off SARMs and feels empty, for example, with low libido and decreased energy, they wonder how this could happen. I bought a jar, supposedly from a sports nutrition store, thinking there couldn't be substances in there that would affect me like this, but unfortunately there can be. Indeed, and you get all the same side effects that an athlete who has been on a cycle gets. And as often happens, you just stop and quit without any post-cycle therapy. This is what's called secondary hypogonadism, which is induced by these stimulants. And there's no real difference for your body whether you quit SARMs or you were on gear. So SARMs really aren't anabolic steroids, but they're not just simple vitamins either. Studies found that healthy men taking 1 milligram of ligandrol daily for 21 days saw testosterone levels drop by up to 55%. After 5 weeks, luteinizing hormone production was fully suppressed. At the same time, muscle growth was actually about 1.5 kilograms. Well, and the price is clear. I have a Telegram channel, subscribe to it. I share my thoughts there, some of my life hacks, and modern research. This channel will make it much easier for you to preserve your main resource, which is your health. You can find the link to my Telegram below this episode. SARMs really have less androgenic activity in the skin and in the prostate gland, so hair loss will actually be less, but only up to a certain dosage level. With higher doses, this selectivity gradually disappears. The same receptors are found in the liver, central nervous system, and skin, and SARMs activate them similarly. That's why they are officially approved, but honestly, in 2025, not a single selective androgen receptor modulator will be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. For clinical use in humans, all these drugs are still at their research stage. Nevertheless, they are freely sold on the internet as supplements and often under the guise of research substances. I am strongly against this because by selling them without any prescriptions or restricted access, you create the impression that these are just vitamins. And the problem is that no one actually checks the real composition of such capsules. And according to our data, 60% of the samples that were analyzed in independent laboratories turned out to be either synthetic steroids or unknown metabolites. So when you buy SARMs, you're really taking a gamble, and the side effects that are kept quiet and you often don't see listed on the containers are suppression of your own testosterone production, a decrease in follicle-stimulating hormone, and as a result, impaired spermatogenesis leading to reversible but still infertility. So, if you're planning to have children, you definitely shouldn't use SARMs during this period. Acne, hair loss, irritability, and insomnia can all occur at high doses. There may be an increase in liver enzyme activity since this is an oral tablet form and it affects the liver. In some people, it can also cause an increase in low-density lipoproteins and a drop in good cholesterol. The most important thing, which is rarely talked about, is the withdrawal effect after the course. Testosterone doesn't come back instantly if you've been taking these drugs. Sometimes it takes several months, so I recommend that if you do use these drugs, you should monitor your hormonal system, get checkups, and do proper post-cycle therapy if you've crashed your axis. I want to do this because the audience watching this episode is quite specific. For everyone who needs a checkup, here's a gift. Among 5 commenters, under this video, I will give away 5 checkups with a follow-up consultation at my clinic, BioCheck. You can find out what types of checkups there are by following the link below this video. Take part in the contest, 5 checkups with a follow-up consultation at my clinic. We conduct checkups in any city in Russia, so we look forward to your comments, and I want to give you checkups. We all like to be a little bit of a cheater and look for some magic pills. Actually, it's about the same thing. But the brain and body influence each other. When testosterone appears in the body and when you interfere with this system, the brain starts to think, look, I have so many resources, so much testosterone, maybe I can take a break. Our pituitary gland becomes inactive, stopping communication and commands to our testicles. That's why SARMA is an attempt to keep control over testosterone, but at the same time not take responsibility. But unfortunately, the body doesn't distinguish any of this, and for it, there's a simple and clear signal. If androgenic activity has increased, it means it can turn off its own production. Why produce it on its own if everything is already present in the body in the right amount? Is there any safe way out at all if someone has already used SARMA? You don't need to panic, you don't need to be afraid, you just need to know the truth. Your luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone levels just drop drastically. And that's why, if after stopping selective androgen receptor modulator, you have problems with your luteinizing hormone, follicle-stimulating hormone testosterone, prolactin, and estradiol levels, just do post-cycle therapy. If needed, a short course of clomiphene citrate, also called clostilbigit or tamoxifen. To stimulate your pituitary gland, get enough sleep, protein, fats, vitamin D, zinc, and magnesium. So basically, recovery after it won't differ depending on testosterone, but testosterone, unlike SARMs, doesn't affect the liver. Is there any alternative to SARMs? Who uses them? Those who want something safe, well, probably it will be safer. Natural stimulation of the axis is physical activity, especially compound exercises, intermittent fasting, a sufficient level of cholesterol, weight control, and proper sleep. These are the basic stimulators of androgens. And if we talk about pharmacology, the kind that's available in pharmacies, then in medicine there's another way that we, doctors also use. It's a selective estrogen receptor modulator as an alternative to hormone replacement therapy. I don't really approve of this method when lifelong therapy is needed, but for a short period of time, it's acceptable. When you can increase luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone because your own luteinizing hormone production is not suppressed, in fact, it increases, and this stimulates its production. That's why this therapy with clomiphene is safer and more physiological than therapy with SARMA. People who start dabbling are those who just need a little bit, just a slight boost, a slight recovery, and they don't want to use Testosterone. Why do we even need to discuss all this? And why are you so interested? As it seems to me, because SARMA, honestly, I don't think it's something truly evil, but it's a tool that humanity hasn't yet learned to use properly. It really is needed for the sick, it's really needed for the elderly, for those who are exhausted. But when a healthy young person takes it just to get some short-term effect, to impress someone at the beach, I'm completely against it. Especially when you don't fully understand what the drug is, that it has side effects, that it's not that safe. As they tell you, your estrogen won't actually drop at all, and that 60% of these drugs are counterfeit, and you might end up taking some anabolic drugs without even knowing or wanting to. Our body is not our enemy, but remember, it's also not an object for experiments. It always responds to everything we do because inside we have balanced systems. And when we see that a woman's cycle is disrupted, or for example, a man's libido decreases, the endocrine system acts as a litmus test for everything else, for synthesis, because hormones require fats, zinc, selenium, iodine, and vitamin D. And when these are lacking, the brain simply doesn't get the signals that the body is ready to function at full capacity. For women, this is clear. Their cycle gets disrupted. For men, it's less obvious. But it affects their quality of life because their testosterone levels drop, their interest in life decreases. I made a separate episode about the signs of testosterone deficiency, and that's why, in fact, you just need to approach this realistically. You can't make a rational choice if you honestly don't understand whether the drug in front of you is a fake or not, what its side effects are, and what it will actually do for you. I hope this episode has brought you some benefit and clarity, and I hope you make the right choice. Stay healthy, subscribe to the channel, and keep up with the updates.